He looked me dead in the eye and said, because someone had to. And I hated that I had no idea what to do with that. I found him in the waiting room after the doctor cleared me to leave. Simone had gone to get the car, which I suspected was less about the car and more about giving me a moment, because Simone has always been annoyingly perceptive. Jake stood up when I walked in. He had his jacket over his arm and his sleeves still rolled up, and there was something careful in the way he was looking at me, like he wasn't sure which version of me was about to come through that door. I stopped a few feet away from him. The doctor said you described my symptoms in detail. I did. Months of symptoms. Yes. I crossed my arms. How long have you known? He was quiet for a second. Then, since the Caldwell lecture in October. You went under for about 45 seconds. Professor Caldwell was looking at the board. I made enough noise with my chair that he turned around before he could see. October. That was 7 months ago. You never said anything. What was I supposed to say, Mara? Hey, I think you might have a sleep disorder. Also, please don't beat me for this internship. I almost laughed. I hated that I almost laughed. You could have told me. You would have told me to mind my business. He was not wrong. I absolutely would have. So instead you just quietly covered for me. For 7 months. I counted 11 incidents, he said. Give or take. 11. He had counted. I stood there trying to process the fact that my arch-rival had been keeping a private tally of every time my body had betrayed me, not to use it against me, but to protect me from anyone who might. Why? I asked. It came out quieter than I intended. He looked at me for a long moment. Because someone had to. And then Simone honked from outside and the moment dissolved. I spent the next 3 days at home. The doctor had given me a referral to a specialist and a pamphlet about narcolepsy management and a very firm instruction to rest. Simone enforced this with an iron fist. I was not allowed to open my laptop before 10 in the morning. It was genuinely the most stressful vacation of my life. On day 4, Dr. Wren called. She told me the internship committee had reviewed the situation. Given the circumstances of my collapse, they were not disqualifying me. They were, however, restructuring the final phase. Instead of competing head-to-head with separate presentations, Jake and I would be required to complete the final project as a team. A joint proposal. One deliverable. Submitted together. I asked her to repeat that. She did. I sat on my bed for a very long time after I hung up. Simone appeared in my doorway eating an apple. How bad? They want me to work with Jake. She took a slow bite. Like, together? Joint project. Final phase. Mara. She was trying not to smile. I could see it. That's not bad news. He's my competition, Simone. He carried you out of an auditorium and sat in a waiting room for 3 hours. I did not have a good answer for that. We met in the library the following Monday. Neutral territory. I got there first, which was intentional, and I had my notes spread out across the table in a way that was also intentional, a kind of territorial claim, a reminder that I was still me, that nothing had changed. Jake walked in, looked at the spread of papers, and sat down across from me without a word. He pulled out his own notes. They were color-coded. Of course they were. We worked for 4 hours. It was not easy. We disagreed on the project angle within the first 15 minutes. He wanted to lead with the financial modeling, I wanted to lead with the market analysis, and neither of us was willing to yield without a fight. We argued in the low, controlled way of two people who have been arguing in libraries for years. Sharp whispers. Pointed looks. The occasional tense silence. But somewhere in the third hour, something shifted. He made a point about the data structure that I hadn't considered. I made a counterpoint that refined it. He looked at what I'd written, nodded slowly, and said, "Okay, that's better than mine." Just like that. No ego. No deflection. I didn't know what to do with that either. At one point we both reached for the same reference book and our hands landed on it at the same time. We both pulled back immediately. Neither of us said anything. But I was very aware, for the rest of that session, of exactly how much space there was between us across that table. Not enough. That was the problem. It was not nearly enough. On the walk out of the library, the sun was going down and the campus was quiet and gold, and Jake fell into step beside me without either of us deciding that was what was happening. "You're doing okay?" he asked. "With the diagnosis?" "I'm fine." "Mara." "I'm processing," I corrected. "There's a difference." He nodded. We walked another half block. For what it's worth, he said, it doesn't change anything about how good you are at this. I stopped walking. He stopped too, and looked at me, and the evening light was doing something deeply inconvenient to his face. Why do you do that? I asked. Do what? Say things like that. To me. You're supposed to be trying to beat me. Something moved across his expression. Something I couldn't quite name. Yeah, he said. I know. And he walked away first, which had never happened before. I stood there on the path watching him go and thinking about the way he'd said yeah, I know, not like an answer, but like a confession. And I started to wonder if this competition had ever really been about the internship at all. And then, 2 days later, Simone found something in the internship committee's archived emails that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. Stay tuned for the next part.